Morning, sunshines. Welcome back. So today we're going to talk about the second phase of the rehearsal phase of production. Yes, so you've got the pre-production done, you've had the auditions happen, you've had your first rehearsal, everybody's gotten measurements, everybody's gotten the contact sheets is all approved, you've got the rehearsal schedule all down. Typically, the next step is to figure out your character development. Now, this is called table work, and table work, as it suggests, is just having the actors and the director and you sitting around the table and discussing the play. Now, this can also include, depending upon the type of show you're doing, there may be, for instance, we did a production of Arcadia where everybody has to waltz, and so we started before we got them on their feet for the production, we had a choreographer come in and teach people how to waltz. If you have a dialect coach, you may have somebody who just spends a day or a week or however long talking about the dialect and going through the script literally word by word and discussing how each word is spoken in the dialect that you're in. The table work, in other words, can last for a couple of days. It could last for a week, depending upon how important or how different the characters are from the people that are playing the characters. For instance, if you grew up in Ireland and you're doing an Irish play, you don't probably need to spend a whole lot of time on an Irish accent. Or if you're living in Alabama and you're doing Crimes of the Heart, you probably don't need to spend a whole lot of time on a Southern accent. But if you're in California, or in Canada, or somewhere else you're doing Crimes of the Heart, you may need to spend some time learning the ins and outs of a Southern accent, right? And so, again, the amount of time spent in table work is usually up to the director. Some directors find it exhilarating just to talk about the characters. If you have a dramaturg, a lot of times the information a dramaturg will have will be shared, especially at table work times, as far as what the meaning of words is or the meaning of phrases. Bless her heart, it doesn't mean bless her heart, it means bless her heart. Idioms, that sort of thing. You might also have colloquialisms, things that are just figures of speech. If you've got a period drama, you may discuss what, different things that they're doing during the day that, instead of having a car, they have horses, or instead of having, if in Seagull, they had to, take horses back and forth to the town, that sort of stuff, or carriages, that sort of thing. So again, how they live their life can be important things to discuss about how costumes fit or how they act toward, things in the production. Yes. So table work can be very expansive or it can be very small, depending upon the needs of the director. As a director, I find it is helpful for me and most of the actors to have gone through at least the first act of the show to get people further along in the process of understanding who they are as far as relations to one another in the rehearsal, and that way the table work is more. There's more investment there because the actors understand more who they are. If instead of starting with table work, you may move table work to later in the first part of rehearsal. But again, that's the director's prerogative. But typically, and here's a little video about table work.
I started working on this in the spring of 2009, and I'd read this book several years prior to that and knew that I wanted to do a stage play based on it. So I contacted T.C. Boyle and introduced myself to him and kind of explained some of my ideas, and then we worked out a rights agreement. One we might look at is 59 and 59A. That's the entry of the wall.
I think the reason that I jumped at reading this book in 1995 and why I wanted to do a play based on the book then and why I'm doing it now is that I live in a place that used to be part of Mexico, and I have a theater that's 20 minutes from Mexico. I'm picking up on 58 now.
So I love the table work with the actors and the designers and the director. I have a great debt of gratitude to everybody who's offered opinions on this text and made it better.
And the wall's so big, the work lasts for 3 months. 3 months of work and 3 months of pain.
Can we move that to the front passage?
Put it in the beginning.
Having Matt is fantastic because he can shed insight onto each of the characters and the story and what's going on. And he's also very open to listening to our feedback.
We are all part of this conversation. It's not just the one actor in that part and the playwright. We have a big discussion about, how would that affect my character? How does that affect the audience? So he's really interested in making it authentic.
There's a great opportunity for everybody to be involved. It's laying the foundation. It's like digging all the dirt away to put the play in.
It's very much about what is the tortilla curtain? What does it keep us protected from? And who does it keep out and who's it let in?
Despite the fact that we all have certain assumptions about other people, is that what it all comes down to is the fact that we're all humans.
And we're in a binational region. We should do plays that talk about the world we live in.
Given the long history that this theater has with working with Latino playwrights and doing plays of binational significance, I don't think there's a better theater anywhere to do the first professional production of this play.
Again, just not saying it's exciting, just sitting around talking about stuff and interpreting things and getting actors to understand where things come from, that sort of thing. All right, at some point you're going to get the actors who are going to get on their feet, and then you have to make sure that your prompt script is ready, that you have prepared your script, and that you have the appropriate pages for you. Again, the prompt script should have the script, well, the information in 3 parts. The first part are things like contact sheets, the rehearsal reports, all that sort of stuff in the front. Then you have the script itself, and next to each page of the script, you should have a sheet that has, I prefer having just one ground plan and then several lines to record blocking on, non-numbered, so that as you write down each number for the blocking, you can then just transfer that number straight across. I know people who like to have each one numbered, and then if you just, if you're going down the page and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are blank, and then number 6 you write down the blocking, you just in the page, in the script you write down 6 over here as a note. This prompt script is going to have 2 competing notations. The blocking, which is what you're doing now, and eventually you're going to have the cues for the show that you're going to have to call. Typically, if you're right-handed and you're writing the blocking with your right hand, right, it's better to have the blocking on the right-hand side and the script on the left-hand side. Now, if you've got your script folded up and down, right, have the script on the top and the writing on the bottom, if that's the way you want to do it. Turn it sideways, 90 degrees, yes? But that's, again, how you orient your script is up to you. But there should be some relationship between the pages that you're recording the blocking on and the script itself, so you can see the notations that are happening. Again, if you want to just draw a caret with a line, a lot of times that can get confusing. I prefer just using a number and then having the number next to the blocking where the blocking occurred. Again, all pencil, because blocking is going to change, trust me, yes? And the reason why you update your blocking isn't so much for the actors necessarily as it is for if there's a replacement or somebody who comes in later, an understudy, that sort of thing, to make sure it's right, and for historical archival purposes. In blocking, you've got to come up with some sort of notations. Cross is easily, most people are going to put an X for a cross. A cross is moved from one side to the other. A counter is where you have 2 actors standing next to each other, and one will move left and the other will move right. Typically that's 2 X's where they're standing, and then an arrow and an arrow. Shows a counter, that's what that is, that's called a counter. Again, I would have at the top of each page on the actual diagram of the set, you might put a little circle with the character's initials on the top drawing, so that as you get to each page, you can say, okay, Oedipus, your stage right, Jocasta, your stage left, whatever the blocking is, you can at least from the top of the page know where it is. And then as the blocking continues, you can draw arrows on the actual physical diagram of the set, and or have, Oedipus with an O, or OR, or Oedipus Rex, and with a circle around him, and then cross down to 1, and then down here have 1, and it says Oedipus crosses to statue, whatever it is, stage right, whatever it is. Again, the 9 basic stage areas: stage right, stage left, down stage, up stage right, up stage left, all those sort of things. Just because they move in that direction doesn't necessarily mean they arrive there. So if it says Oedipus crosses stage right, it may mean they move a couple of steps stage right, but if it says cross to stage right, that means they moved all the way to stage right. If they cross 2 up center, they moved all the way up center. Whereas if they cross up center, it just means they took a couple of steps. So again, you're going to create your own shorthand for the blocking, because again, one of the things about blocking, it's going to happen fast and furious. And a lot of times it's in tones that are not intended for you to hear. Again, you need to stay out of, excuse me, I didn't hear that. That's not what you should say. You should listen as best you can, and then when they run things, make note of where they run. And if it means recording it with your camera and then later transcribing that into your script, do that. But that means, you're relieving the director of technical concerns. You don't want them to know that you're even taking blocking. It needs to be this magic thing that happens. Yes? Now, if you have a choreographer or somebody else staging parts, a fight choreographer, I would ask them for, they're gonna have a list of the choreography, and I would ask them for that list. Now, you may not know what a fifth position is, but you can write down the blocking of the movement of the blocking. In other words, Oedipus moves stage right is still fine, even though it doesn't matter that they did a pas de deux, whatever. That's only important to the people who know what that means, and obviously I don't. But you can still have that information, and you might need to insert that in the script, or at least have it in a tab back there for choreography and or for stage combat in case you have a fight call or a choreography call and a question arises. You can have the information even though you don't necessarily know what it means. But speed is of the essence. It's got to be accurate. Whatever notes you take, again, needs to be in pencil, and as it changes, again, my rule of thumb, if we're running a scene that has been blocked and the actor deviates from the blocking they were given, as a director, I would rather see it fail. I would rather let them do the blocking wrong until the point where it all collapses, because you know what? The actor might be doing something brilliant. You don't know. But when it all fails, then you can say, all right, when did we deviate from the blocking that I gave them? And then there can be discussion, at least in my terms. As a director, that's the way I like to work. Some directors, I know directors who've given, everything is planned out, and the director will give you their prompt script to copy the blocking down before the rehearsal. And so you've copied the blocking, and they want those actors to move the way that they have choreographed it on the page. So some directors are very adamant about the way they do their blocking, and some directors are a little bit more freeform. And then there are those that are just totally organic and don't want you to write down anything for the first, until we get to tech rehearsal, right? But at some point, again, it has to solidify, it has to become part. The last thing, it has to be legible. Whatever you write down, somebody's gonna read it other than you. So whatever code you've come up with, you gotta be breakable. It can't be some hieroglyphics that nobody in the right mind can understand. And if that means having a legend for your blocking, then have a legend for your blocking. But again, it's like shorthand. Everybody's gonna develop their own little system. I've given you in the notes there a system that is sort of standard that I think anybody would understand. You can see there in the notations the way a couple of examples of how the scripts can be used. Again, the one thing I would note is that in the one script there, the light cues and sound cues, I would have different colors for light cues and sound cues. But you can see how they have gone through and made the notation for the blocking. Another thing that you can consider, instead of just numbering things sequentially like they did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you might start and number things 5, 10, 15, 20. So that way, if there's internal blocking added later, you can go back and add blocking in between. Again, that's your call. But it's just a different way of taking notation. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's 5, 10, 15, 20. I would go back to the first number when you turn the page. Each page is its own separate notation. So you don't wind up like having 1,525 as your blocking notation. Each page would start with 5 or 1, whichever one you're starting with, yes. Again, here's a little bit about blocking and putting in your script. The one thing I would note in this video, he talks about having to cut the corner of your blocking notation page. I think this is a great idea. Once you've got your page of your script and your blocking sheet that has your script, your ground plan and your notes and your lines, just cut, if you cut the bottom corner of it, that way when you grab the piece of paper, you flip from script to script, yes? So make note of that, but here's a little video of a man taking blocking. I think is very good, very effective.
Block, 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 double block, block. Let's talk about blocking notation. My name is Kent, and this is your half-hour call. Attention cast and crew, this is your half-hour call. Half hour to the top of the show. Half hour, please. Alrighty, friends, we are back with yet another episode of the Almost Complete Guide to Stage Management. If this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Kent, and you are watching Half Hour Call. Half Hour Call is dedicated to shining the spotlight in technical theater, so if you like how-to videos like you're watching right now, interviews with industry leaders, or general theater updates, make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss anything. Blocking notation is one of the most important parts of a stage manager's records. This is where you'll get all of the information that you need to maintain the show as directed and keep track of the director's vision. Blocking is where the actors move on stage, so it's where people go, what they're doing, how they're doing it, and it's the stage manager's job to keep track of all of that. An accurate record of the technical blocking of the show, as well as the director's vision, is vital, especially for a long-running show. In order, here are the 3 most important factors for how you notate blocking. The number 1 most important factor is accuracy. Your blocking notation is no good if it's wrong or an old version of the show. Number 2 is speed. It may be immaculate and perfect, but if you can only get half of the scene done, it's not that helpful. Number 3 is legibility. Now, this is not the same thing as neatness, because it might be sloppy, but if you and your team can read it, it's an effective blocking notation system. Now, how do you keep the entire cast's worth of blocking information in your one copy of the script? If you remember from our video about scripts, there's not a ton of room on a script page itself, so it's a good idea to have your script single-sided and write on the opposite side. A lot of stage managers find that a way to make your life easier is to have your script on the opposite page from where you write. So if you're right-handed, that means you're going to hole punch it on the opposite side than you normally would, so that you have a blank piece of paper on the right side and the script on the left side. So now we have that entire side of the paper to work with, which is where you'll probably write most of your blocking. And to match the things you write on that piece of paper with the script page, usually you'll number the blocking notes and then insert that number where it happens in the script. Personally, I like to go by 5s, so that way if I need to go back and add something, I don't have to immediately go to like 4.1. And then each new page starts that numbering system over. Otherwise, by the end of the show, you're gonna have like blocking note number 4,755, and no one's got time for that. But you probably don't want to write on the actual back of the script page for 2 reasons. Number 1, if there are any script changes to the following page, your blocking notation is going with it. Number 2, it is super annoying to try and print out specific script pages so you can replace it and make it neater. So it's going to be a lot easier if you just have a stack of pages that you can grab and replace at a moment's notice. So most stage managers will create something called a blocking slip sheet to put between each page of the script. This allows you to optimize the page for your blocking notation system and add in miniature ground plans so that you can keep spacing notes. So let's go ahead and create a slip sheet for the play that goes wrong. The first decision to make is how many ground plans do you want in a single sheet? As a general rule, more movement will warrant more ground plans. So a dance-heavy musical is going to have a lot more ground plans than a 2-person straight play. For musicals especially, some stage managers will make 2 different types of slip sheets. One with like 1 ground plan for scene work, and then one with multiple ground plans for songs with more staging. Personally, I'm a very visual person, so I would always rather have more ground plans than not enough. So my default is to do 3 ground plans along the outside edge of the blocking sheet. Decision number 2, do you want lines to write on? How big do you want them? This one's super personal and really depends on how you like to handwrite things. I like to include lines, but I make them super light so that I can just barely see them. So if I want to write on a line, I can write on a line, but if I need to ignore them to like draw a diagram or really anything, I can still ignore them. Decision number 3, do you want to add in numbers to these lines so that you don't have to number them by hand? Personally, no. I like to add the numbers by hand because that gives me the flexibility to go back and add something in between 2 blocking notes later. And now print out as many slip sheets as you have pages in your script, and then a few extra for when you need to replace pages as things change. So now that we've prepared our slip sheets, let's assemble our book. Pro tip, save time by cutting corners. Literally, if you cut the bottom right-hand corner of your pages, which for right-handed stage managers would be the bottom corner of the blocking slip sheet, for left-handed stage managers, the bottom corner of the actual script, when you grab that corner, you'll flip to the next page of the script automatically, so it'll flip 2 pages at once instead of having to like thumb through it and figure out which 2 pages are which. This makes your life super easy because you don't have to like tape the pages together, which is a terrible idea because as soon as you tape the pages together, there will be changes that mean you need to untape them and then somehow replace the slip sheet and retape them, and it's just a whole thing. Also, it's kind of embarrassing that it took me so long to realize this, but if you assemble the pages first and then hole punch everything, your life is going to be so much easier than hole punching the script, then hole punching your blocking slip sheets and putting them into your binder one by one. Now that our book is assembled, it's time to notate. Guess what I'm about to say? That's right, no 2 stage managers take blocking notation in the same way. If you ask 100 different stage managers, you'll get 100 different answers. It's a very personalized system to every stage manager, and it is not standardized, and anyone trying to tell you that it is standardized is not correct. That said, here are a few things that are generally accepted to be correct, or at least you should know about so that if you're reading someone else's blocking notation, you can decipher these things. Number 1, abbreviations for character names are usually 2 letters and are kind of like the abbreviations for the state, where it's whatever 2 letters from the state's name that you need so that you know which state it is. Similarly, ensemble members will often be notated with their actual name, so their initials. So if I was an ensemble member, it would be KC. Generally speaking, someone's actual name is going to be a lot easier to remember than their track number, and plus, as we're working to incorporate more gender-inclusive language, having someone listed as man 1, woman 1 might not be the best choice. Everyone agrees that X means cross, and if you're working on a proscenium show, everyone agrees on the stage directions, being stage left, stage right, upstage, downstage, all of that jazz. But what if it's not a proscenium theater? Thrust and in the round stages are a lot more complicated to notate because there's no traditional downstage or upstage. Try to find out what the theater already uses to describe these spaces, so that way everyone's speaking the same language. Some common options are to visualize the stage like a compass rose, so you could write north, south, east, and west, or you could visualize it like a clock face, so you would have like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and so on and so forth. Speaking of adapting to what the theater already uses, you should probably do the same thing when deciding what to call certain entrances and exits. So if everyone at the theater refers to something as the alcove, if you incorporate that into your paperwork, they know exactly what you're talking about. And in production meetings, it can be helpful to pay attention to how the director and scenic designer refer to the set. So that way, when you notate something occurs on the platform, you know that that's different than on the bridge, and that's different than on the staircase. If the theater you're working at doesn't have established names for entrances and there's nothing really unique about them, you can simply use L1, L2, L3 for stage left, and R1, R2, R3 for stage right, respectively, starting at the most downstage entrance being R1, moving upstage until you get to all the entrances being covered. This is a lot of information. Hit that like button if you're still with me. So here's where things begin to get divisive. In my opinion, if you or a member of your team need a key to read your own blocking notation, you're doing it wrong. If your system isn't intuitive, change the system. The exception to this would be like super large cast shows where you need to keep track of those initials that you've created for characters and actor names until you get to learn it better. Sometimes you'll see blocking notation that looks like hieroglyphics, and I'm just like, why? Why are you making this more complicated than you need to? But how do you find a system that works for you? My advice is you need to get out of your own way. Here's how to do that. Do an exercise like I'm about to do, where you're taking blocking notation that is too complicated and way too fast to get it all done in one go. And yes, you are supposed to fail miserably. If you don't fail miserably, you didn't pick an example that's complex enough. Once you're done, look at your paper. What system came to you naturally? And then take that, clarify it, and improve that system because that's the way that your brain works. So that's going to be the most intuitive for you. Sort of like when you lose your keys, always put it back in the first place that you looked, or when you forget a password to a website, when you finally go and change it to the first thing you guessed because that's where your brain is going to go next time. This way, instead of working against your brain by creating some kind of really complex system, you're working with your brain so that you won't have to think about that as much and you can focus on what is really important, which is the blocking that's happening in front of you. But establishing your blocking notation system is only half the battle. You also have to figure out your workflow to get it as efficient as possible. For example, if you're expecting a lot of changes from your director, which is probably all directors, one solution might be to have multiple pen colors. Then each time you go through the scene that day to switch pen colors, so that way at the end of the day you have every version that you were doing, but you also know exactly which notes are from which version. And when things change, don't throw out the old blocking sheet. Just put a new blocking slip sheet in front of it. The cut corners will still make it just as easy to flip, but you won't lose the old version. Sometimes the director's going to turn to you and go, you know what? I liked what we had yesterday better. What did I tell them to do yesterday? And if you threw that away, good luck.
Cool. Hopefully that helped. Again, each night you're going to create what's called a rehearsal report. I've given you an example in your notes of a rehearsal report that's actually filled out, just to help you understand, as opposed to having a blank one like I normally do. But again, you can see the time the physical warm-up started, the time you worked on the scenes, how long each scene was, the cast fittings that are coming up, the comp ticket information, etc., the next schedule, who was there, who was absent, who was late. All that sort of information is there for every rehearsal. And again, a lot of those things, like for instance, if you're an equity show, if somebody's late, they can be fined for that. And so again, the rehearsal report would be the thing the producer would take to the actor and say, listen, you've been late to every rehearsal this week. We're going to take $30 off your paycheck, $5 a show, $5 a rehearsal, etc. So again, this can have ramifications. You also making sure that, again, I would email a copy of that to everyone. However, I would also have a hard copy of it posted on call board. And again, even though, for instance, in the one I handed you, this is not a note for every category, I would still consider having every category listed on your rehearsal report: costumes, lights, sound, etc., props, so that they know there were no notes. So again, that can be a couple pages long, not just one page. It can be a couple pages. And again, you want to date everything, and you want to make sure that people know that you filled it out. Or if you have an assistant stage manager fill it out, that the assistant stage who filled out the form should be a line somewhere on that. All right, as you're going through the rehearsal, you're going to start prompting the actors. Again, there are several different sort of categories. I would, the first time they do it, I would put a little check by it, any kind of mistake they made. But the next time through, I would circle it. If they do the same mistake over and over wrong, they've learned it wrong. If they just miss it one night, it could be they just forgot something. So the first time, just put a little check by it. If you want to put, again, here's a little list of symbols. If they called for line, if they got to a point and just said line, just put a C. That means they called for the line. And again, I just put a little check and a C. If they call for it again, I put a circle and a C. They obviously don't have it figured out in their head what the connection between, and again, when you don't have it in your head, that's a time when the director needs to come forward and say, okay, what is this transition and why can't you make it? What do we need to have happen? What is the thought process as an actor between this line and why can't you make that leap? Why are you having this block here? Again, it may just be a couple of bad rehearsals. Just maybe that you learned the lines up to a point and didn't turn the page and forgot to learn from another point. So it can be a simple explanation. But again, those are just things that are going to happen that are just opportunities to improve or to polish the script. If they paraphrased, again, I would, the first time, put a little check with a P for paraphrase. A paraphrase is getting close. They have the right meaning, but not the right words. Now, again, if the actor is, this is your call as a stage manager. If the actor is sort of holding the script and gets it close, you know what, congratulations. You know what you're trying to say. You just don't know what it is you're saying. So that's a leap. To know what you're trying to say is great. And for an actor, it's important because that way they know that you know in rehearsal and in performance, if they can't remember the exact words, they at least know what they're trying to accomplish, right? So paraphrasing is not horrible, but it still should be accurate and should be the lines. If they bobble words, for instance, let's say I'm a senator who doesn't know what non is. That's a joke just for today, but it's funny, trust me. 20 years from now when you're hearing this, I hope it doesn't make any sense. That's a bobble. They've bobbled the word. And especially words, they're just words that we don't say in life, that the characters say. And so you have to, if your character says it, it's a word they know and they understand. It doesn't mean you know as a person that word. And so it may just be sitting down with a dictionary or with a dramaturg and having them go through and explaining the word and how it's used and the appropriate emphasis and the right syllable, etc. Yes. So bobbled is again just a note to take. If the line is late, again, a lot of times actors will develop thinking processes for lines, and we'll have to go through the whole process of how they get from one line to the other to get the right line, but they just deliver it late. It's not in rhythm, it's not on the right tempo. And again, if you learn it wrong, if it's an agreement between the director and the actor, great, that's not late. Matter of fact, if it's an agreement between the director and the actors, they should pause. If you're doing Pinter, half the play is pauses. How long is this pause? No, I won't tell you this, sir. Yes, I will, because now I said it. When my lovely wife Val was directing me in a production, and I had to kiss, I'm gonna say 5 young ladies during the course of the show. And so when we were blocking it, she started by saying, well, this is an impassioned kiss, or this is a peck, or whatever. I was just like, no, Val, just tell me how long I'm supposed to kiss this person. I'll figure out what it is. So, this is a 1-second kiss. This is a 3-second kiss. This is a 7-second kiss. Okay, now we know what these things are. But I wasn't gonna have my version of an impassioned kiss be her version of an impassioned kiss. So, just tell me how long this is. I'll work what it is inside of it. So again, just something to embarrass myself. Pronunciation, again, especially if you're working on dialect, a lot of times that can be a hard thing to come around, is the way the word is pronounced. I wouldn't necessarily, again, I would just make it a note. My rule of thumb is 3 times. I'll give you the note 3 times. If you can't change it after I've given you the note 3 times, and the director isn't insisting that I give you the note, when you get it right, I'll let you know. I'll congratulate you. But just assume it's always a note, but after 3 times, you know it. That's the way you've learned it, right? If you jump a cue, and this can be very dangerous, there are false cues in the show. In other words, there are a lot of lines that are similar to one another. One of my favorite stories, we were doing a production of a show in Dallas at the Dallas Repertory Theater. It's called The Lark. It's about Joan of Arc. And I know that nobody knows who this person is, but in Star Trek, the very first 2 years, there's a man named Lawrence Montaigne, who was a local Dallas actor, who played the Klingons the first 2 years of Star Trek. So he always was the Klingon. That was his claim to fame. Anyway, so this was in the 80s, and Lawrence Montaigne really hadn't anything, why else would you need to do anything else but be the Klingon? So we were doing The Lark, and in The Lark there is an executioner that has a huge monologue at the end of the first act. I'm talking 5 pages of monologue. And so we're doing The Lark, and so the director knew this guy, Lawrence Montaigne, but he was an equity actor. And so this was basically a community theater in Dallas. And so it became big news that we were gonna hire this equity actor to play this role. And part of the director's concept was that because it was all about Joan of Arc having her head chopped off, that the executioner was not just going to be a character that appeared, but the executioner was gonna sit on stage the entire show. He was designed into the set. So when the audience walked in at 7:15 or whatever time, the executioner was already in their chair. And then we did the show, and the executioner had his monologue, and we did the intermission. The executioner was still there. We brought him some water or whatever. But the executioner never left stage. That was the director's concept. So opening night, a woman playing Joan went up on a line and jumped a cue. And it was a very similar line that we had not identified in rehearsal, but it was very similar to a line that she had in the second act of the show. So she's in the first act of the show, and she jumps the cue to a line in the second act of the show and starts proceeding from there, and the rest of us were like, we all knew, but she didn't. And by the time she realized what she has done, we're already in the middle of the second act. Several people had come on and interest has been made. So instead of being an hour-and-a-half show with two acts, that night it wound up being about a 45-minute show. And my mother, because again, this equity actor was in the show, had come to see it. And so I said, so Mom, what'd you think of the show? Again, audiences don't know the show. Audiences don't know that what they have seen is a mistake. So I knew that we had messed up, but she didn't. So I said, Mom, what did you think? She said, well, Michael, I just don't think I would have paid all that money for that man to sit there. And I was like, well, Mom, normally he doesn't just sit there. He actually has something to say. But tonight, he did. You are correct. We paid him all that money tonight to just sit there and look sweaty. So anyway, sometimes, well, and sometimes it's just jumping a little bit, but it can be very fatal. So a lot of times you need to make sure as you go through the script that you make the actor aware of where they might potentially jump if they're not 100% on the ball. Yes, pointing out things like be careful that you don't jump to this cue because they're very similar lines, right? So if they do, of course, make a note of it, but even if they don't, make them aware of it. Adding handles. A handle is an extra word or phrase that you add to your delivery of line, like okay, or oh, what's, I mean, I do my little tick with my tongue. They're just things that actors aren't aware necessarily that they're doing. Mike Mann won't mind me telling this story. He would indicate. So for instance, he would have a line and he knew that, you know, Cody had the next line, so he would start his line and then he would sort of throw him a basketball. He would just, you know, hey, it's your line. And it was just a motion that he did subconsciously that he didn't even know he was doing it. So if the actor has added a handle or does something that is not the character doing something, but the actor doing something, again, you might go to the director to say, is this okay, before you ruin it, because the director may love it. The director may say, oh, that is so brilliant. They're doing it, they don't even know they're doing it. So don't ruin that. But if they add a handle to something, especially if they do it more than once, adding us, yes, where you're looking for it, and I can't stop doing it. But letting actors at least know where they're adding handles with a little H. Again, we've got a blocking exercise coming up. I'm going to give you the ground plan. Hopefully you've already got it in your script. But what you need to do is look at the video of the death trap that's coming up. And then what I want you to do is on those pages, transcribe where Helga moves on the stage as best you can. I understand that's not an exact copy, but as best you can, indicate where people are sitting, where they're standing. Again, it's not exact, but it's the closest thing I can get without actually having to stage the whole show for you right here. But again, we're going to add a video here at the end. This is a video of the same guy we talked about earlier, but it's going to be him actually transcribing blocking, so you can see how he works through the process of blocking by watching a video, and he goes through it 4 times to get the dance movements and all that sort of stuff. So again, if you feel like watching the last 10 minutes video just to watch how he takes blocking, I think it's well worth it, but that's the end of the lecture today. All right, we'll see you next time.
Previously on Half Hour Call. An accurate record of the technical blocking of the show, as well as the director's vision, is vital, especially for a long-running show. Most stage managers will create something called a blocking slip sheet to put between each page of the script. This allows you to optimize the page for your blocking notation system and add in miniature ground plans so that you can keep spacing notes. If you assemble the pages first and then hole punch everything, your life is going to be so much easier than hole punching the script, then hole punching your blocking slip sheets and putting them into your binder one by one. No 2 stage managers take blocking notation in the same way. If you ask 100 different stage managers, you'll get 100 different answers. Everyone agrees that X means cross, and if you're working on a proscenium show, everyone agrees on the stage directions being stage left, stage right, upstage, downstage, all of that jazz. If your system isn't intuitive, change the system. Sometimes you'll see blocking notation that looks like hieroglyphics, and I'm just like, why? Why are you making this more complicated than you need to? This way, instead of working against your brain by creating some kind of really complex system, you're working with your brain so that you won't have to think about that as much and you can focus on what is really important, which is the blocking that's happening in front of you. Attention cast and crew, this is your half-hour call. Half hour to the top of the show. Half hour, please. So we've talked a lot about how to notate, but what are you going to notate? Where are the actors, furniture, and props in the space? What are they doing in that space? why are they doing that thing and how are they doing that thing if the director specifies it. You don't need to notate choreography. That's the dance captain's job to maintain, not yours. But to blatantly steal from my mentor Claudia Lynch, you should take the blocking of the dance. That just means where are the bodies in the space. So instead of Tombe Padabure Soda Shah Batma, you'll write Jenny crosses downstage left. I also notate lifts, jumps, interaction with furniture, changes in elevation, and that's pretty much as specific as I get. Anything that might be a lighting cue or affect the lighting because of where the bodies are in the space. The example I'm about to do is from the Tony Awards performance of Waving Through a Window from Dear Evan Hansen, and that is all that I would write, right? Like, that's as far as I would go in terms of choreography. Anything more dancey than that would be purely the domain of the dance captain. And with that said, let's go! Alrighty friends, so here we are all set up to take the blocking for the Tony Awards performance of Waving Through a Window. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do it 4 times. I'm going to watch it 4 times, so it's still going to move a lot faster than a real rehearsal would, and I'm not sure how accurate it's going to end up being because of the angles for the Tony Award performance, but we're gonna figure out what happens. So here we are, and let's go ahead and get started. My first run is going to be with blue, and I'm going to get as much as I possibly can. Here we go. All right.
I've learned to slam on the brake before I even turn the key. Step out of the sun if you keep getting burned.
Cross center.
Step out of the sun because you learn, On the outside,
learned.
Will I ever be more than I've always been? Cause I'm tapping on the glass. I'm waving through a window. I try to speak, but
and he's staying still.
so I wait around for an answer to appear while
This is really not an interesting song to take blocking for.
Step out of the sun because you've learned, on the outside, always looking in. Will I ever be more than I've always been? Cause I'm tapping on the glass, waiting through a window. I try to speak, but nobody can hear, so I wait around for an answer to appear while I'm watching people pass, waiting through a window. Can anybody see? Is anybody waiting? When you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around, do you ever really crash or even make a sound? When you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around, do you ever really crash or even make a sound? When you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around, do you ever really crash or even make a sound?
Ah, there's a lot of people happening. Okay, everyone else enters.
Like I never made a sound. Will I ever make a sound? On the outside, always looking in. Will I ever be more than I've always been? Cause I'm tapping on the glass.
I didn't get anyone's positions.
I try to speak, but nobody can hear, so I wait around for an answer to appear while I'm watching
line.
waiting through a window. Can anybody see? Is anybody waving back at me? Is anybody waving?
All right, so that's take 1. So let's do that once more. This take is gonna be in green, and yes, I know I'm doing blocking in a pen, non-erasable pen. Get over it.
Did I even make a sound? Did I even make a sound? It's like I never made a sound. Will I ever make a
Connor,
sound? On the outside,
Heidi, Jared, Larry, Alana, Cynthia. Zoe, Cynthia, Jared, Larry, Alana, Heidi. All right, past 2, I got most of it. Oh, that's another thing. I don't have numbers. You'd normally want to put like 0, 2, 4, 6, right? All of the numbers just to make your life easier. Or if there were any kind of like a center line or types of things that might make your life a little bit easier. This is going to be my last chance because this is my last pen color.
Before I make the mistake, when you're falling in a forest and there's nobody around, do you ever really crash or even make a sound? On the outside, always looking in the will. I try to speak, but nobody.
Jared,
Wait around for an answer.
Zoe,
Watching people pass.
Alana, Cynthia, Alana, Zoe. Down in the description below, there are links to a PDF version of the working copy that I took all 4 notes on, and then I transcribed that into a clean copy so you can kind of see more of what it would look like in a final archive. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention digital options for taking blocking. I'm a pen and paper person myself, but I think it's important that you know that these options are out there. StageRight is kind of the industry standard in terms of apps for this, but it costs money to use, and everyone on your team would have to have their own subscription. So I don't think it's the best choice. I've seen a lot of people lately using Google Slides to keep track of blocking and props and things. That's a cool option. I've never done it myself, but it's something to explore. And if you're a digital blocking type person, let me know down in the comments below what you use and how it helps you to keep track of blocking. So if you create a blocking notation system that is intuitive to you and allows you to accurately, quickly, and legibly take notes of blocking and the artistic vision of the show, you will be armed with everything that you need to maintain the show for as long as you're a part of it.